So let's say you're the self-loathing type that likes to spend more time stripping bolts than riding your motorcycle, then that means it's time for a project bike. Or maybe you have a nice, reliable daily driver so you won't miss out any potential riding by betting the farm on a 500-pound rolling chassis. Also, you can't just call it what it is, a piece of crap. You can save the rolling chassis business for your Built Not Bought Facebook group, or maybe you just need an excuse to hide from your family in the garage, a fate many emotionally stunted men will encounter. All jokes aside, a project bike can be a worthwhile experience, and they don't all have to be turds. There are plenty of bikes that are easy to work on, have a litany of aftermarket parts, and are cheap to initially purchase that are deserving of a worthwhile spot in your stable. Let's get into it. The first bike on the list today is the Goldwing. The Goldwing has been made by Honda for nearly 50 years, and they're still making touring dads excited in their jorts. There is a reason you still see Goldwings from the 1980s being sold for pennies on the dollar, because these things just won't die. But Honda somehow keeps printing them out and selling thousands year after year and lending itself to the surplus. There should be like a Honda Goldwing purge where for one day a year it is completely legal to do whatever you want to all Goldwings made before 1995 just to keep the population in check. It's like how humans killed all the wolves, so now there are too many deer, so now they're like, okay, we gotta kill the deer now to keep the population under control. Except Goldwings have no natural predators, so there isn't even a root cause of their population surplus. Most motorcycles are killed by reckless squid owners or the relentless passing of time, but Honda's over-engineering and the normcore dads who ride them have made Goldwings somehow immune to death's cold scythe. Their natural cycle of life and death that turns most motorcycles into worm food has been eluded by most Honda Goldwings' tenure. My point? A 30-year-old Goldwing with 50,000 miles for sale for $1,000 might not be a bad investment for even the most novice tinkerer. With a little bit of elbow grease and a little time swapping out some blown-out air ride suspension, you can have yourself a nice little touring bike for 1/69th the price of a Harley-Davidson bagger. And with the Goldwing's dash setup, you can install all sort of aftermarket accessories to make touring even more enjoyable in case the heat, AC, air pump, and Geiger counter that come stock aren't enough amenities for you. If you want a project bike to ultimate tour with, look no further than a late-model Honda Goldwing, and you'll be able to ride in reverse gear from sea to shining sea. And there's proof on YouTube that these old Goldwings can have life in them yet. Go check out Shade Tree Surgeon's channel where he tours the world with some old crusty Goldwings. It's pretty cool to see. Okay, maybe not the world, maybe just the swamps of Florida, but still, he's out there. But maybe you're not a boomer in Zoomer clothing, and a big touring bike of specific vintage is not really quite your cup of tea. You're looking for a bike that you can wrench on that will ultimately act as your chariot to ride through the apocalyptic deserts of a not-so-distant future on your way to trade bottle caps for guzzling. If that is the case, I'm thinking you need a bike like the Honda XR650L. The XR650 is like the cockroach of dual sport bikes, omnipresent, defiant, and capable of adapting to every type of environment. If there's a running theme for today's video so far, it's that any bulletproof motorcycle that has been unchanged for decades is probably a good platform to build on. The XR650 has been in production since 1993, and the models on the showroom floor look pretty dang similar to the originals, if you ask me. This bike has an air-cooled single-cylinder engine and a carburetor. You know what that means? If you've got a hand tools and an understanding of trial and error methodology, you'll likely be able to keep this bike running in just about any situation. Skynet wiped out the entirety of the digital infrastructure? Zuckerberg makes you registering all fuel-injected motorcycles in the metaverse? Forget about it. The XR650 didn't need no dang computers in 1993, and it sure don't need one now. These bikes are also dirt cheap, less than $7,000 from the factory, so you won't feel any buyer's remorse after spending some coin building it up into a fearless apocalypse spec adventure machine with a big gas tank, an aftermarket exhaust, a windscreen, and some racks to easily bring all of your wares to trade in Diamond City. History is cyclical. If H.G. Wells' The Time Machine was anywhere near accurate in 800,000 years, humans will be back living beneath the earth in primitive societies, and the XR650L will likely be right there alongside with them, with its engine thumping away to the rhythm of decay and destruction, or kryptonite by 3 doors down. But really, you should buy an XR650L used. Don't buy one brand new from the showroom floor. You know, one essential tool you'll need to work on a project bike? Here's a hint, it's the oldest tool in human history. They're referred to as the digiti manus, in Latin, the human finger. You might be saying, what the heck is Yam talking about? I'm talking about making sure you don't lose the articulation of your fingies necessary to thread a bolt or pull in a clutch lever by wearing the proper gloves. We talk about helmets and boots and jackets, but a lot of motorcycle gloves don't get the recognition they deserve. So I want to take a second to shout out the EVS Valencia Street Gloves. With the touchscreen thumb and index finger, these gloves are as functional as they are safe. They feature carbon fiber knuckle protection, full leather palm reinforcement, and a lightweight, breathable fitting. These gloves are comfortable, functional, and safe. Sounds like the holy grail for how inexpensive they are as well. We've got them for sale over at shop.yammie-noob.co. We are not sponsored by EVS, but rather we are trying to sell you some great gloves. So go and check them out. Every dollar you spend gets you entered to win one of our giveaway motorcycles as well. So maybe you can ditch that busted Project Sportster after all. Check out the EVS Valencia Street Glove on shop.yammie-noob.co today. So we all know the Harley-Davidson Sportster is the bronze ring of the project bike world. They've been relatively unchanged since the 80s, and they have more aftermarket parts than you can even imagine, and they're pretty damn easy to work on. So for that reason, I'm not going to highlight it today. Everyone knows the Sportster is an A-tier project bike. I mean, look at all the turbocharged Sportsters you can find on YouTube. So instead, I will mention the bike from Harley-Davidson that is better suited for real bikers and not sissy Sportster riders. Harley-Davidson for hardcore brand lifers who have, as a whole, deluded themselves into thinking their bikes are fast. I'm talking about the Harley-Davidson Dyna. The Dyna chassis was introduced in 1991 as a hybridization of the Sportster platform and the Touring platform, sort of like a middle ground for people whose commitment to drinking Busch Light made their stature a bit too cumbersome for their quaint Sportster, and whose commitment to gambling and bad investments made a touring bike out of their price range. Bikes in the Dyna line, which ran till 2017, do feature larger engines and slightly improved components compared to the Sportster line, but like most Harley-Davidsons, they will need about $5,000 worth of aftermarket parts to make them worthwhile machines. And luckily, late model Dynas can still be found on the cheap, being sold by boomers in a pinch who gave all their retirement cash to the Nigerian prince who sent them a very heartwarming email. And like most bikes from HD, the Dyna has countless aftermarket options for every single part on the bike, from suspension to brakes to a whole new crate engine if you really felt like it. And if you don't want to do all the work yourself, every corner of God's great country has an independent Harley shop where some guy named Spider or Bronson does top-tier work for like $50 an hour. Take that, Ducatistas. If you're tired of the normal UJM Cafe Racer build and want something with a little more character and edge, the BMW R100 is an awesome platform to build on. These bikes can be found built up into cafe bikes, bobbers, and scramblers. The R100 is a classic motorcycle from BMW that uses their air-cooled Boxer twin engine. It is fitting that this bike sees new life as such varied motorcycle builds because the platform was pretty diverse in its heyday too. It was used for road bikes and even the R100 GS, which was BMW's proto-adventure bike that was quite successful during rally races in the 80s. Back when adventure dads were in pursuit of grandiose experience on aggressive terrain, instead of hopping from one coffee shop to another in search of the finest oat milk latte and avocado toast. Will those jokes ever get old? I don't think so. These air-cooled Boxers are pretty bulletproof when maintained properly, and they're pretty easy to work on as many of the vital engine components are erected horizontally from the frame. Builds with these bikes can look pretty sweet with their single-sided swing arm and monolever and paralever rear suspension systems. I can't explain to you what that means, some sort of proprietary German engineering design, just like ShamWow. You know the Germans always make good stuff. All I know is these bikes look cool, and like many of the bikes on the list today, these air-cooled BMW motorcycles have a hardcore international group of simps who know every last detail you'll ever need to build one of these bikes, down to the finest minutiae like the torque spec on the rotary girder. So if you want to know the benefits of the monolever besides the fact that it looks cool, I'm sure some guy named Wolfgang on K100stands.de could tell you. Not every project bike needs to be a clapped out piece of junk before you get your hands on it. If you're able to find a motorcycle that is relatively new for a good price, it might be worth using that as the basis of your project. You can still ride it when it's not under the knife, especially if it's the only bike in your stable. A great example of a new motorcycle that is cheap enough to justify spending money on mods and performance upgrades and has a good amount of aftermarket support are the 650 class of bikes from Royal Enfield. Both the INT 650 and the Continental GT share the same engine and chassis and only really differ in riding position and aesthetic changes. But both of these motorcycles have a good selection of aftermarket parts from reputable brands like S&S that you can utilize to turn a slow, rumbly Royal Enfield into a slightly less slow, rumbly Royal Enfield. And really, it is way more enjoyable to work on a newer bike where nothing is seized or stripped or rusted out, and you can just pull off parts and slap on new ones with ease. I think Royal Enfield has the opportunity to be the Sportster for a new generation as HD phases out their air-cooled Evo engines. They are simple machines that are easy to work on and maintain with an increasing supply of aftermarket parts, and they have earned their place as a worthwhile project motorcycle. It's a much better plan to pull the engine to install a big bore kit on a $6,000 bike than a $12,000 bike, in my opinion. And what if you want a project motorcycle in the form of a dedicated track bike? If you're going to commit to track day riding on a regular basis, it probably makes sense to get a separate motorcycle. Not just to avoid the hassle of track prepping your daily every time you want to go ride it, but because a track day motorcycle is going to live a hard life. From stressing your engine by keeping it at redline lap after lap, to making Play-Doh out of your tires, the inevitable low side that comes with pushing your limits too quickly because your fragile ego is at the risk of being shattered when you get outpaced by a 14-year-old girl. It's okay, buddy. It happens to everybody. Keeping those stressors far from your daily driver will help ensure that you're able to keep your precious steed in tip-top condition. And a project track bike can be built in a way to perform better on track that would likely inconvenience you during regular street riding. So, what bike am I going to rent for such purposes? An SV650? An R3? And while there are plenty of options for a dedicated track bike, considering I just recently bought a Ninja 400 that is already built as an endurance race machine, that is what gets the Yammie stamp of approval for today. A Ninja 400 makes more power than some of the other smaller bikes, they're pretty inexpensive to purchase, and there's plenty of aftermarket support and community knowledge. The last bike on the list today is the Honda CB750. I know I've talked about this bike countless times, but I gotta think about how someone may be finding this video who hasn't seen all of our back catalog of content, and it would be an injustice for someone to see a top 7 project bikes video without a CB750 on it. I mean, I already left the Sportster and the SV650 off. I can't leave the CB750 off as well. That would be madness. The CB750 is the epitome of a classic UJM, and riders and builders have determined them to be the ideal platform for a cafe racer build. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of well-done CB750 builds all over the internet and more information than the National Archives. Parts are readily available as well, from OEM stuff to Chinese Amazon junk to hand-built parts made specifically for custom CB750s. So you really have the ability to go as deep as you want with one of these builds. So there you have it, top 7 project motorcycles. How many busted project bikes are in your garage right now? No wrong answers, unless it's more than one. Come on, you hoarder. Please be sure to subscribe if you like what we do here on the channel, and while you're at it, click the notification bell so you'll always be up to date on that sweet, sweet, sweet Yammie Noob content. Fact: more than 1/5 of all the calories consumed by humans worldwide is provided by rice alone. Hell yeah. Love rice. Goodbye.
Keep watching.